A greater emphasis on mission can revitalise the church in Melbourne, says an American missiology expert. Speaking at Ridley College's Mission in Melbourne masterclass on April 22nd, guest lecturer Ed Stetzer told the attending pastors, missionaries and theological students that the key was not redoubling their efforts as much as it was encouraging others to engage more in mission. Ed has trained pastors across 6 continents and has extensive experience in planting and revitalising churches, and has written dozens of books and articles on the subject. Anglican Media caught up with Ed after the masterclass to talk about the challenges facing churches in Australia and what can be done about them.
Australia is increasingly entering, like much of the English-speaking Western world, kind of a post-Christian's too strong of a word, because still, depending on if you listen to the census, it's a little over 60%, or McCrindle, it's just slightly under 65%. Of Australians identify as Christian. It's just losing its cultural value to be a Christian, and the convictional Christians, those who take it seriously and live it out in their lives, they're a much smaller percentage of the population as a whole. So as kind of the value of being a Christian and culture kind of shrinks, you're going to find people who aren't really committed drop away. Nominalism, nominal Christianity is still the most predominant form of belief, but nominals are actually leaving. They're becoming more secular people. We call that the nuns, the none of the above. So the nominals are becoming the nuns. So nominalism and secularism are two growing, and nominalism actually declining a bit, but still the biggest, and then secularism growing, the biggest challenges for us to address as we share the gospel to this broken and hurting world.
But it's not all bad news, with much of the day's discussion centred around how to engage these nominal Christians and even secular people in the gospel.
Nominal people, and so those are people maybe who are thinking of dropping out or functionally have dropped out, but still have some loose connection to Christianity. We continue to show that perhaps the gospel has some viability for what they're considering, that what they treat maybe as a tangential part of their life, as kind of an afterthought, might be more important than just that. The claims of Jesus really are significant and worthy of consideration.
There's a thing in our culture that pushes people towards passivity rather than activity. But the scriptures are pretty clear. 1 Corinthians 12:7 says, a demonstration of the Spirit is given to each person to produce what's beneficial. Some translations say, for the common good. So everyone in your church has been gifted by God for the common good.
So with secular people, we have to start at a different place. They're not beginning with the presupposition that, you know, that there's a God and God sent His Son who died on the cross for our sin and in our place. So we have to kind of point them to a different way, a different worldview, if you will, and to show them by the way we live that it actually makes a difference in our lives, and then to share with them what we believe that actually made that difference. And I think that kind of gives the opportunity, secular people, to consider what it means to be a Christian.
Ed says that while there's a whole range of styles and techniques that pastors can use to revitalise or expand their congregations, the goal should be inspiring parishioners to seek out the lessons offered by the Bible outside of church. He warned that too much spiritual spoon-feeding could lead to a codependence that inhibited his personal growth.
When pastors do for people what God has called the people to do, everybody gets hurt and the mission of God gets hindered. But you will be praised and affirmed, and you'll get your identity from that affirmation. Let me give you an example. I love it when people come to me and say, at church, I really love it in my flesh when they say, man, I just don't understand the Bible unless you're preaching it. And when I hear you preaching it, I understand it. I'm like, that's awesome. What I've done is I've made them reliant on me rather than teaching them to engage the scriptures on their own.
Ultimately, I really want people to engage the Bible at home, because that has the greatest correlation to spiritual growth than anything else. So open the Bible, share it, but more importantly, get people to open it on Monday and read it, and that makes the difference.
It's that kind of personal reflection, says Ed, that will transform the way churches operate in Australia, perhaps even bringing a new spiritual edge to a supposedly post-Christian age.
You know, I hope that we'll have a deeper sense of God's mission, that we'll move people from sitting in rows to sitting in circles to provoking one another to love and good deeds, to living as agents of God's mission. So ultimately, they might show the love of Jesus to a hurting world, a broken world. They might share the love of Jesus to a lost world. Jesus came serving the hurting and saving the lost. I think that the church is called to join Jesus in His mission. My hope is that's the message that came across today.